would your plan be if these gain access to a smartphone with all your cards and bank accounts on it? Ooh. Now, before we dive in, just a quick reminder. This video is for informational and entertainment purposes only, and should not be considered financial advice. Our full disclaimer is shown here and on our website. Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Finance with Anthony. Today we're going to be tackling a few financial situations right here on the Personal Finance Reddit. So, let's dive right into some scenarios. Will I be stuck with my parents' debt? My parents have no money saved. Their plan is to keep taking out reverse mortgages or loans on the house to finance their retirement. But they also put the house into a trust. So I would immediately receive ownership if they pass away. I'm worried this means I would inherit all their debt. If there's no equity left in the house, can anyone help / have advice? So I just want to say that, kudos, to your inheritance. But I will say though, if you do decide to actually inherit the house, you actually will have to take on any of the debt that's associated with the house. So even though it's in a trust, you become the owner of that trust. So once you become the owner of that trust, any assets and liabilities that are within that trust, you will be responsible for. So whether you decide to take the house or not will be dependent on your financial situation. And of course, if you decide to do it, then just make sure you're ready to pay, any liabilities as well as any taxes that are associated with the estate. Another option that you may have in this situation is if you decide that you don't want to get the assets or the liabilities under your name, you can actually just refuse the inheritance and the state will take care of it for you. So essentially the state will take ownership of your trust and you will not have to pay any of the assets, any of the taxes or any of the liabilities that are associated with that asset. So, hope you make a great decision and what's best for you, of course. Alrighty, let's move on to the next question. Sudden inheritance. What do I do? I've read the Windfall Wiki and some similar threads. My father died after a long illness last year, and my mother this month unexpectedly. She was always private about finances, but had a settlement she kept secret, and invested with my brother and myself as beneficiaries. Long story short, after life insurance, investment accounts, sale of house, and collectibles, etc., I will inherit about 1.2 to 1.5 million USD. I am currently mid to late 30s, single, no kids, low cost of living area. I have about 120k left on my mortgage at 2.75%, about 40k in other debt between student loans, loan to replace roof, etc. Own my own vehicle outright, no need to replace for now, about 100k in 401k or 403b account, contribution already maxed, started late due to school. I make about 100k per year at a job I mostly like. I get essentially unlimited therapy sessions through a work employee assistance program. I don't really want to think about money right now, and I haven't told anyone, but I recognize that it is an amount of money that could potentially affect my life, or at least retirement, or let me feel financially secure enough to have children of my own. Other than paying off non-mortgage debt, starting an IRA and doing max contributions over a few years, and investing in ETFs tied to the S&P 500, is there anything I should do financially specific to my situation? My family never had any money growing up, and the pattern I imprinted on was basically using today's paycheck to cover yesterday's expenses. So I'm worried about bad habits hurting me in the future. So, really great story. Thank you for sharing. The first thing I will say is that for each of the things that you're receiving, there is actually an implication of receiving each of these. So the first thing is when you actually get life insurance proceeds. So life insurance proceeds on a tax basis actually has no taxable impact. So essentially, once someone does pass away, you actually are not taxed at all. So that essentially is, to pay directly to you and you don't have to worry about any taxes. Now, in terms of investment accounts though, investment accounts, you do have to pay estate taxes on this. However, depending on how it's transferred, you might actually be able to actually, on top of paying the estate taxes, you actually get something called a step-up in basis. So what a step-up in basis means is if your parents bought it at $40, but it's now worth $150, this actually becomes your new base. So when you go to sell it, your gains is going to be a lot lower. Your taxes, your capital gains tax. So that's another thing you should consider for this piece. And then finally, the sale of a house and collectibles. Those are actually taxed usually at the long-term capital gains tax, depending on how long they've actually been held. However, collectibles specifically have a higher tax rate, usually around 28 to 33%. So each of these have different tax implications, which will actually decrease the amount of money that you actually will be inheriting. So now, going on to your question, what should you do with it? So overall, you're doing a lot of the right things. Investing into your 401k, your retirement accounts, making sure that all of your debts are effectively paid off. So I would say the best piece of advice I would give you is to pay off every debt you have. So basically get rid of all the debt that you have, your mortgage, your non-mortgage, effectively get rid of everything with this new inheritance money. Of course, continue to invest in things like ETFs. Also, there are real estate investment trusts you can invest in. Essentially, try to invest into things that are really passive in nature and don't require much of a lift from you. And I think this will allow you to, to effectively put your money away and kind of not really forget about it, but kind of make it very self-sufficient in nature. So this will allow you to actually grow your money exponentially over the time that you have to retire. And you can actually keep some of it as well if you decide to actually, as you mentioned, have kids and want a little bit more money for that kind of thing. So overall, great position to be in, and best of luck to you.
Hello everyone, my name is Anthony and I'm the host of TheLostSanctuary. I hope you've been enjoying our content so far, and if you have, please feel free to like and subscribe. Also, we have our website up here, and we also have some socials down here, and as always, leave your comments down below.
What would your plan be if Thieves gained access to a smartphone with all your cards and bank accounts on it? Ooh. This post arises out of some thoughts I had after my friend got robbed recently. We don't talk much on this sub about the risk that having your finances electronically integrated into your smartphone poses. My friend's situation demonstrates what can go wrong. After a late night at the bars, my friend was jumped and the attackers took his wallet and made him give them that passcode to his phone, draining his checking account and gaining access to all of his cards on Apple Pay. He was effectively helpless for 3 to 4 days. The robbers took all of his credit cards, both the ones in his wallet and Apple Pay, and so he needed to cancel all of them immediately. He had no access to a payment method for food, a new phone, or anything else. His dad had to ship him a new phone. They took his ID so he couldn't even pick one up, and that had been prepaid, and DoorDash him food for a few days until he got everything together. This has got me thinking that and probably a lot of people are in a very similar situation. All of my cards are on Apple Pay with the exception of one. I also carry them in my wallet just in case. However, if either my wallet or my phone gets stolen, I have to cancel them all anyway. I leave one card at home just in case, but I fear if I report a theft on the other card on the account that they will close both cards. My bank account can also be accessed using my phone's passwords. What does Plan B look like from a personal finance perspective? Here are a few things that come to mind. 1. Should I have a store of emergency cash? How much would you store? I don't want too much money out of my savings account or investments not accruing interest. 2. How can I theft-proof my bank account and credit cards? If they have access to my phone's password, it's all over. Conversely, if I carry my cards in my wallet and then steal it, then it's also over. I have 4 cards that I potentially need to use on a daily basis and can leave only one at home and off Apple Pay. I don't want to ever end up as helpless and vulnerable as my friend. What is your solution? So this is actually a great question. So overall, what many people have started to do on this trend is people actually end up having a backup phone with most of their records stored away. So the first thing is when you actually have your wallet and your phone stolen, the thief usually has access to everything, especially if you give them your passcodes. There's even devices now that are created that can actually hack into your phone without you even giving your passcode, your passwords, or anything. So once the thief actually has your phone, they can actually access most of your financial records. So the quickest thing you should do is, of course, report as quickly all of the cards that were stolen. Also, if you had your Social Security in your wallet, you never know. Also, make sure that you report all of that stolen. So the most important thing is to report as much as you can, especially make police reports, because all of these things will be important when you make claims on your account. Because you need proof that effectively your credit card was used without your authorization. Any loans that were used on your Social Security were also used without your authorization. You need to actually have a paper trail to ensure that most of those items are not effectively on your name. So whether it's loans, credit cards, or other items, you want to make sure that you're covered in that regard. The second thing is having the backup phone is important. The reason for that is because on the phone, if you're able to get it in time, sometimes even if you report your card stolen, the thief might be able to actually still use your card, potentially, depending on the time frame. So actually on your phone, if you have the backup phone with all your other applications, you can actually quickly change your passwords. You can actually lock your cards. So essentially that will limit the amount of, funds that could be withdrawn from your accounts. So hopefully this helps. And one thing I will say about the cash piece is make sure that you keep your cash secure, because cash is actually something that if it is taken from your account will take sometimes months to years to actually recoup, depending on the amount. So actually having backup cash at home, as mentioned here, will be essential if you ever are in a type situation where you actually do need some cash, because it does take a long time to actually get cash back. Alrighty, so now that we've covered that, let's move on to the next one. Employer gave me a small chunk of stock 3 years ago. It's tripled in value since then, and fully vests this year. Should I cash out? If so, how? They gave me 5K in stock around 3 years ago. I have access to half of it right now. 1 quarter becomes available next month, with the final quarter shares becoming available in August. Stock prices has nearly tripled since then. To be honest, I kind of forgot about the fact that they gave it to me, and it's just been hanging out. There's not anything I'd want to do with the money at this point, but I feel like having $50,000 entirely reliant on a single company's stock price is risky. I like my employer, but hey, you never know. Seems like it would make more sense to put it into something low effort / low risk, but have absolutely zero idea what that would be or how I would go about doing it. Any advice here would be great. So, I did want to talk a little bit about what is vesting. So vesting usually means that a stock or an option, effectively the right to buy a stock is an option, would be vesting over time. So what that means is you'll have access to that stock or option as you fulfill your employment agreement. So in most cases, most employers will want you to be there for 1 year, and they'll give you a quarter of your options or your stocks. And then every month after the first year, you will earn X amount of stocks or X amount of options that you can then access. So now, what's the reason for having stocks and options in the first place? Options usually are priced lower than the actual value of the stock in most cases. Well, hopefully that's what you're hoping for, and then you can actually buy the stock at the fair market value it is now. So an easy example we could talk about is that an option that is valued for Apple, let's say let's say you could buy, let's say the option is $50. So it costs you $50 to actually cash out this option. Once you actually cash out the option, you'll be awarded 1 Apple stock, which in today's market, it's probably worth a lot more than $50. It's probably worth like $100 to $200 per share. So essentially you actually get more bang for your buck if you have options. So that's why most people actually have these kinds of things, and that's why it's important to actually keep track of options and other items. Now going back to, should you have it in one company? That is a key example of putting all your eggs in one basket. And that's not something you want to do. You don't want to do that because there is a risk that the company could go under. It's happened countless times. There's a lot of companies out there who 1 year were very potent and very powerful in nature, and the next second they're essentially, it's the company's in the ground and you have something known as worthless stock, which with a value of 0. And that's not something you want to do. So I would say taking out this $15,000 out of this account and actually putting it into an ETF, or tracking the S&P 500, putting it into a real estate investment trust, or any brokerage account as well if you want to invest in other items. But just make sure you diversify it. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, because that's the worst thing you can do. Alrighty, so let's move on to the next question. Does signing a separation agreement with former employer affect unemployment pay? So today was not great. I was laid off from my company due to restructuring. My mind is still swimming a bit when it comes to next steps. So one of the things I know I want to do by tomorrow is file for unemployment. My only question is, does the separation agreement I was sent by my now ex-employer have any bearing on this? It describes the separation payment, fancy way of saying severance, I guess, I'll receive for the next month. I have to sign the agreement and send it to receive anything. I have not done that yet. For the record, I'm in Missouri. So, there's a lot of things to unpack on this one. So the first thing is a separation agreement. What is that? So separation agreement usually is an agreement that employers have you sign when you're fired or laid off. And this is usually is because you're going to be receiving some form of compensation. In this case, this employee is receiving severance. Severance is a form of payment that you receive from your employer when you're laid off. Usually it's usually 2 to 4 weeks, and you also get an additional 1 week or 2 weeks depending on the number of years you were at the company. So essentially, it's roughly 100% of your salary for 1 month if you get the full 4 weeks, and then you'll get an extra, piece every week or 2. So the longer you work at the company, the more severance you'll be getting. Now, does this impact your unemployment benefits? In most cases, it does not. So unemployment benefits usually are not capped, based on severance pay, and you'll be entitled to your state, max. Usually, to be honest though, unemployment is not a very large amount. Usually it'll be like $300 to $400 a week. So it won't be anywhere near the amount that you're probably earning before. So keep that in mind when you are filing for unemployment. Now, in terms of one caveat for the separation agreement, make sure that for the separation agreement, there is no verbiage in the agreement that says that you're actually, quitting your job, or essentially you're doing it voluntarily. So you don't ever want to say that you're voluntarily quitting your job, because if you quit your job, in most cases, you will not be eligible for unemployment benefits. So that can actually impact, not just your unemployment benefits, but it can impact all the other benefits that you might be able to apply for, such as health insurance and other items. So just make sure that you read the verbiage in those legal agreements that you get, and definitely fine tune, cone it, and make sure you're looking at everything that's in there. So hopefully everyone here learned a bit about all these new scenarios. And this has been Finance with Anthony, episode 8. I hope everyone out there has a blessed day, and adios.
Keep doing what you're doing. You're doing an amazing job, and I'm wishing everyone out there all the best. All right, until next time, adios.